Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Gran Touring Series Racing League Season 39, round number 3. That's right, it's the final week of the races for Season 39. It's the final time that we'll be taking the KTM Crossbows to the circuit, and today we're here at Spa-Francorchamps for EU Division 3's finale in what is expected to be quite a quiet race in terms of number of drivers, but still a hotly anticipated finale to the season. We've still got questions unanswered with regards to both the Drivers' Championship and also the Constructors' Championship. I'm going to be your host at Trackside, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And at the Belgian circuit right now, I can tell you that it's 8:15 in the morning. The sun is coming through nice and high in the sky. It's making its way further and further upwards into the sky, and we've got some great conditions for our drivers to be racing in as we're waiting to get underway in 29 minutes with the opening qualifying session. Now we say hello to those of you who are tuning in the chat already, including Pingo Phone, and on top of that as well, we've got many others who are most likely tuning in right now. Don't be shy to say hi, of course, if you haven't already said hello. If you do have access to the ability to say hi, then it's always good to hear from you, but it is good to be here, and without further ado, really, we have got to get underway with what is going to be the final set of races for Season 39 across the GTSRL board. Now, of course, do keep in mind that it's going to be one of those instances whereby, because we have a limited number of drivers here, we're going to be resolving a few questions quite early on, but still, we'll take you through the story of the championship in both the drivers and the constructors, and I'm sure we've still got a few spikes in the tail and indeed some surprises out there, which will catch us all by. Could we expect a completely different winner tonight? Perhaps we'll even see completely different people finishing on the podium. You'll never know. Now, as we take a look to the drivers then, let's start introducing them one by one, of course. We've currently got 4 drivers making their way around on the circuit, alternatively parked up in the paddock, getting ready to go. We are expecting a total of 7 to arrive tonight, EU Division 3 having been a bit of a quiet division this season, with a number of drivers who did sign up not turning up at the first race, and as a result have been booted out of the season, as our organisers not too pleased with them. But we're really going to be starting off, as we take a look back at our briefing notes here, with our championship leader as he currently stands, and that is Zalogon, or we know him as the Mexican who races out of the circuit, who we can't currently see, unfortunately, so we won't be able to introduce our Drivers' Championship leader straight away, which is unfortunate, but we will expect to see him in a little short order. But the first driver who we can introduce them, as they're making their way around on circuit right now. If you'll just give me 2 seconds, ladies and gentlemen. As man, a slight technical issue here, as we still feel Deadly getting it very wrong out of Ix there and having a technical issue of his own, quote unquote. We have got, we've got Phil Deadly, and we've also got Brownie making their way around, and we are going to be starting off by introducing the driver known as Heedless Sidays, and that is the Scottish driver, of course, sat here in the pits right now. The Scottish driver currently sat in P2 in the overall Drivers' Championship, as you see his teammate Spilky Biltong has arrived, and Heedless, having had a very good run of form over the course of the 2 rounds to date, is really on course tonight to take the fight to our championship leader, and it is going to be between the two of them, our championship leader being Supremo. And, well, who is going to be at the top step come the end of it? Well, Heedless is going into this only 1.5 points down on our championship leader right now, and the story last time out at Croatia, Dragon Trail Gardens, was a bit of a difficult one for Heedless, where the fact he picked up a P5 in race number 1, a 2nd place in race number 2, and a 2nd place in race number 3. So he had a difficult start to the evening. I was caught out a little bit by the combination despite practicing for it, and also there were some incidents down the field, but over the course of the 2 races later after that, he was able to pick up where he left off at Kyoto in Japan the week before. And then it is a gap of 8 points down to what is 3rd place in the Drivers' Championship as it currently stands, and it is his teammate Spinky Biltong, the British driver, of course, having worked in close collaboration with Heedless throughout the entirety of the season. The two of them have been inseparable in terms of their driving styles and their tactics, and Spinky, whilst he did have a difficult round number 1, his round number 2 was a strong one, with the fact he came 3rd in race number 1, a win in race number 2, which everybody was jumping up and down in joy about. I definitely was. It was great to see Spinky pull off the win, and then in race number 3, picking up a 3rd place for a reliable 44 points, putting him in that position whereby he has an outside chance right now of potentially taking the Drivers' Championship should he benefit, where perhaps Heedless, i.e. his teammate, and also Supremo have difficulties tonight. We've then got an unfortunate bit of news here, which is that Lewis No Regrets TBT, our Portuguese driver, who's also a truck driver in real life, he will unfortunately not be joining us tonight. He's our 4th place man in the Drivers' Championship on 76 points with that legendary effort at Dragon Trail last time out in the final race, which saw him win, but unfortunately we will not be seeing any more of the Portuguese for this season, as unfortunately he has work commitments to attend to, and he will not be able to get himself set up in time tonight to race, even perhaps for, say, race number 3 tonight. So we will not be seeing any more of the Portuguese, so he will be finishing this season on 76 points, and well, we'll have to see whether any other drivers are able to jump him for P4, including our 5th place man, the Irishman of Phil Deadly, as he makes his way out of the grass there onto the Kemmel Straight, having had a mistake by the looks of things coming out of Eau Rouge and Radion. We can see that Phil Deadly right now making his way down the Kemmel Straight down towards turn number 6, and well, he's on 67 points right now and had a reasonable form over the course of Dragon Trail last week, what with that 7th place finish in race number 1, a 7th place finish in race number 2, and then he seemed to just pick things up a little bit with a 6th place finish in race number 3, and we look forward to seeing whether Phil can get himself onto that podium tonight and just perform a little bit better, just up things a tiny bit given the opportunities he's got available to him here at the Belgian circuit. Now, outside of Phil, of course, then we go a little bit further down. We've only got 3 points separating Phil from our Egyptian driver, who races under the Saudi Arabian flag in GT Sport, but I can assure you he is Egyptian, and that is Tamer 2010, who we haven't quite currently got running around on the circuit. We believe he is on his way and getting ready to race. But we are having a number of drivers reporting internet connectivity issues at the moment, so we are looking at 5 drivers currently with a maximum of 7 when all is said and done. Fingers crossed they can all get in at the final hour here. But right now, Tamer, who we can't see on those 64 points, and we will be looking to introduce him in short order. You then got to go a good chunk of points down to find Mr. Brownie 192, or Graham Brown as he's known in full, the British driver making his way right now through Blanchimont and up towards the bus stop chicane here, and unable to take part in the first round. We saw him for the first time in round number 2 last week, picking up 2 4th place finishes in races 1 and 2, and then in race number 3 he came home in what was a 5th place in the end, putting a good 37 points on the board, and he'll be pleased with that. And having got himself already into P7 in the Drivers' Championship, the question will be tonight whether he can get a huge number of points on the board and get himself as close as possible to our top 6. I don't think he's going to be able to jump any more positions, although never say never. If he has a perfect evening and everybody else has a disastrous evening, he could finish as high as potentially P5, but we'll have to wait and see, of course, depending on what's going to happen for the British driver. But even then, he'll want to give it his best tonight. He's been looking forward to this one. It's then with a little bit of unfortunate news. I have to tell you that our American driver of Insubordinate 73, who's currently 8th in the championship on 35.5 points, who's having major internet connectivity issues currently, will not be able to race tonight. Those internet connectivity issues are completely outside of his control. He wasn't able to race in round number 2 due to personal circumstances, but now his internet service provider has essentially failed on him and his entire residential area, so as a result he will not have internet connectivity available for him to race, and he's not able to race on mobile data, so will not be able to see any more of the American in season 39, but be sure he is going to bounce back in the next season, in season 40. Then we come on to our last driver in the championship, who we didn't get to see any of last time out. He wasn't able to make the Dragon Trail Gardens round at Croatia, and that is Hellcat 789. He's back at the circuit, and we're looking forward to seeing what the British driver is able to do. He's on 26.5 points right now, and he's got it all to play for tonight. There's no pressure on him. He'll have the opportunity to go after Graham Brown, who's only 11.5 points ahead of him in the overall standings, and we suspect he will be able to close up that gap over the course of tonight's racing. That's the current situation with regards to drivers, as we say hello to HBoss GT in the chat, and also Jerry Racecar driver there as well, back at the circuit of course, mowing the lawn. It's good to see you guys in the chat of course, and I hope you're all doing well and you've been able to get over the hump day of the week. We've only got 2 more days to go until the weekend, and I hope you're having a good one so far and you're able to sit back and relax tonight as we continue to look around right now, and we see that in terms of the Constructors' Championship, well, we do have a near case of, I think the Constructors' Championship is pretty much wrapped up, with the fact that we do have team number 4, the combination of the Scotsman of Heedless Sea Days, and we've also got or CDs, as I should say, as I keep pronouncing it incorrectly. And we've also got Spinky Biltong here as he makes his way through turn number 8, coming out of Lacom and downhill into turn 9, Sandavot. We can see that those two are on 168 points combined right now, and that is the best part of what is 65.5 points ahead of team number 5. And with only Phil Deadly representing team number 5 tonight, I don't think the Irishman will be able to overcome that point haul, because his maximum point haul is a maximum of 49. So that means that the Constructors' Championship is pretty much resolved, given the fact that the only other pairing that could potentially jump our team number 4 who are leading would be team number 6, assuming that Tamer 2010 is able to make tonight's racing, which we believe he is, but he's not currently out on circuit, so we're hoping the Egyptian can get the car out, and his teammate of course of Brownie. So those two have an outside chance, but it would require effectively Spinky and Heedless to both have disconnections and need to retire from races, which I don't think they're going to let happen if they can afford to help it. But still, that does mean that we have an opportunity here, given the fact that team number 6 are only 1.5 points of team number 5 on 101 points versus team number 5's 102.5. We will be seeing a close fight for second place in the Constructors tonight. And don't rule out Supremo, the Mexican driver, if he is able to get his internet connectivity issues resolved. He is the only driver for team number 2 on 89.5 points in fourth place in the Constructors. Perhaps he'll be able to get into the mix as well and get into the top 3 come the end of the night in the Constructors. And then we've got Hellcat all the way down in 6th right now, with Lewis, no regrets, not being able to represent team number 1 tonight, and he's their only driver. They're on 76 points. Can Hellcat get some good points on the board in order to jump from what is team 3's 6th place in the Constructors on 26.5 points? Can he help them jump that deficit of what is, if I do my math correctly right now, 49.5 points, where it's not statistically possible to make it jump, but how close can he get to that 5th place overall? But that's really the story right now. The Constructors is pretty much wrapped up in terms of the winner, but it's not wrapped up in terms of the overall second and third places. So we look forward to seeing what's happening there. And then, of course, we have that question lingering over our drives with regards to the Drivers' Championship. Will it be the Scotsman of Heedless? Will it be the Briton of Spinky? Or will it be our Mexican Championship leader of Supremo, who comes home with that all-important Drivers' Championship crown come the end of tonight's racing? As we also say hello to Zoronic. Hope you're doing well, my good friend, and that you've had a good day. Now, I am hearing down in race control right now, as all of our drivers are being asked to start listening in to our trackside steward tonight, who is Mike. You know him as MDC. MDC representing the GTSRL stewarding community tonight, and will be hosting tonight's races. We are hearing that unfortunately we are still getting some connectivity issues for Supremo, but he is working hard to get those resolved. He does have the best part of 18 minutes to get those resolved before qualifying is anticipated to get underway. And I believe that we do have, if I just quit out of the spectator cams here, I believe we do have Tamer right now sat in the lobby. So the Egyptian is likely to be racing tonight based on his presence here, but it is just a case right now he's not wanting to get out into the paddock, alternatively out onto the circuit. So that is the current standing, and we will of course introduce Tamer once he does appear out on circuit. Now, last time we saw in EU Division 2, so last night, we saw that the pole position lap in the end was an absolutely ferocious, what I believe, as we see Phil Deadly leaves the room briefly there. So I think something has gone a little bit wrong, and in fact we're hearing that Phil Deadly has got a unfortunate situation to attend to, a family emergency, so he will not be racing tonight, and we do wish him all the best. Of course, something has come up, but we hope Phil and the family are all doing okay. That is unfortunate. So now we are effectively going to be down to what I believe will be 6 drivers, but of course personal life and family come first before the racing, as it does in the real world, as many of you will know, with drivers who over the years have had to bail out for family emergencies, or alternatively have retired from motorsport to focus on family. It's not unheard of, and it's completely respected. As we just make sure that we acknowledge that. If you give me 2 seconds, ladies and gentlemen. But we are right now still in the works of getting Supremo's internet connectivity back online. And we are hoping for a tight set of racing tonight, albeit I think we would like to see at least 6 drivers appear out of the circuit. I'm not sure what's going to happen if also Supremo has internet connectivity issues. whether, well, we're hearing that it's still not working out. I'm not sure if we're going to be expecting the show to go on with just 5 cars, which it may do. Again, that's up to our stewards, or whether we decide to scrap the round. Of course, we'd love to have the racing here tonight. Pardon me, but we will wait and find out. As we're just seeing Spinky come down. But what I was about to say before Phil Deadly unfortunately had to announce his departure there is that with regards to qualifying, given that the pole lap, if I remember correctly, for EU Division 2 last night was a 2:39.105, we are expecting pole position for EU Division 3 to be in the 2-minute 40s. We can see there that Phil Deadly has set already a fastest lap of a 2:40.9. We're expecting high 2:40s in order to be able to be on pole, or low in the 2:41s. That's going to be the competitive time here, but we will wait and see, of course. And there is always that big question of fuel burning over the course of the qualifying session. We saw how powerful the fuel burning was over the course of EU Division 2's night, and also in EU Division 1 the night before, as brought to you by Lionessi, whereby simply taking that fuel out of the car with the number of acceleration zones and straights around Spa, albeit these straights are typically short in, say, a GT3 car, but when you're running around them in a KTM crossbow, those straights feel ever longer, and as a result of that, you gain a lot more time on the straights because you can just simply build up that little bit more speed going into each corner. Of course, you have to react then and understand that breaking into those corners, that it's going to be a case of the fact you'll carry a bit more speed and you don't want to go too deep into the corner. Now, we are hearing that MDC is doing the voice check for everybody right now, and everybody is able to hear him. And whilst that's happening, we can see that our Egyptian friend of Tamer 2010 has made his way out onto the circuit. So let's introduce him right now as he makes his way back into the paddock. And indeed, it has been a season for him to remember, has it for Tamer, with the fact he's on 64 points right now, in 6th place in the Drivers' Championship, and with Phil pulling out tonight, we suspect that he will be able to jump Phil, who's only 3 points ahead. Now, the big question over him, of course, will be that with respect to performances, can he grab another podium or two tonight? We saw that podium back at Yamagiwa in race number 1, in round number 1. And we are hopeful that he'll be able to perhaps snatch another podium, or at least get himself right towards that podium as we're about to get underway with our start checks. And last time out, Tamer had a bit of a difficult evening in Croatia with the fact that he was able to pick up 2 6th place finishes. In fact, all 3 were 6th place finishes in the end, so not right at the back, but it was a bit of an uphill battle. But we look forward to seeing what he's able to achieve here in Belgium. But here's our first start check race then. We're going to get underway and test the connectivity of our 5 drivers. So as they're all getting ready to go right now, this is of course going to give them a brilliant opportunity to test out what it's like in the run down towards turn number 1, and also the run uphill through Erosion Radion. And we're just waiting for those lights to go, and also a chance for them to get used to launching the car and the feel of that speed off the line. And as the lights go out and away they go, you can see all of our drivers making it off the line safely. With a little bit of wheel spin there for Spinky Biltong at the rear of your picture. And as they come down in towards turn number 1, Brownie's going to be on the inside. Heedless looking to go for that cutback line, which is ever so powerful through turn 1 at La Source. We've seen that time and time again where drivers decide to go just a little bit deep, so that way they can turn onto the apex late and then charge all the way down towards turns 2 and then 3 into the uphill run. And here we go, we're going to see Brownie versus Heedless as they make their way up through 3, 4 and 5. You'll see that Heedless there getting caught out a little bit by the dirty air off the back of Brownie's car, but Brownie in return making a mistake over the rise of the hill through turn 4 there and having to back out of it. Both drivers making it safely through. I wonder if there are going to be any track limit penalties applied. Brownie picking up a penalty, but not for Heedless there, as we see Tamer up into P3 and Spinky making his way alongside Hellcat here. Hellcat, of course, having to burn that penalty into the braking zone for what is the start of Lake Com. And as he's burnt that penalty right now, we see Tamer and Spinky side by side into turn 6, getting a feel for battling side by side into the right hander there, into the sequence of right to left to right. And we can see that Tamer making his way round behind Spinky now, not able to get back alongside for the run out of turn 8. But as they come down to Sandovot, we can see that Heedless versus Brownie here. Heedless has got past Brownie. That was in the braking zone, and also the fact that we saw that Brownie picked up that half-second penalty, so it's a natural formation as Heedless now starts to try and pull away a little bit from Brownie, who goes a bit deep through Ix, and Spinky in particular going very deep for Ix there, carrying way too much momentum, but probably thinking he's got less fuel in the car like the qualifying car, but it's definitely not the case as he makes his way down to turn 12 right now. and I believe is going to be charging through here. He runs a little bit onto the AstroTurf, and the rear right-hand wheel decides to say no, and there he goes into that inside wall, and Hellcat there has to be very cautious to dodge Spooky's car, doing a very good job, Hellcat, as they make their way up towards turn 13 and 14 now, and as they come around into the chicane, you can see that Hellcat trying to chase after Tamer and pulling some time on him indeed through 13 and 14 as well. Tamer not having a good run through the chicane by comparison, and meanwhile up front we can see that Brownie getting it very wrong for the first part of Stavlo there, and as he comes through the second part in particular, he's going to have very little momentum, and that's going to cost him a huge amount of time versus Tamer, who's going to start getting ever closer in the rear of that camera as the camera now pans around to look forward, and we can see that Heedless is already up into Blanchimont, whereas Brownie's just getting started, and Tamer will close that gap down, but it's not going to be enough to catch up to him to get a feel for what it's like battling into the bus stop chicane in this first Stuck Check race. But as they all make their way through Blanchimont right now, what has happened to Heedless? I think he's gone a little bit wide there out of Blanchimont, carrying too much speed and not lifting when the car's heavy with fuel, and as a result he makes his way through bus stop absolutely safely, of course, and he will be bringing our field around to complete this first Stuck Check. Oh, will he, as he gets a little bit of a tank slapper there coming out of the final corner, but he does make it across the line ahead of Brownie, and then it's Tamer in P3, and then it will be Hellcat in P4, just holding off for Spinky there. Spinky using this one as a little bit of a feeler rather than becoming too competitive, and that is our first Stuck Check race complete. Congratulations to all of our drivers. I'm just checking in with Race Control whether we've had any update on the Supremo situation. He may be back on his way, which if so, fingers crossed, that would be great news to see the Mexican out there on circuit, because we do have that freeway championship fight, of course, for the Drivers' Championship right now, and we don't want it to be defaulted down to 2 drivers wherever possible. So we are waiting to see whether that's going to be the case. Supremo does have 9 minutes before qualifying is expected to get underway, although if he is on the way to getting it fixed, we will delay qualifying by a couple of minutes in order to try and get him in. So we are just waiting now to see if the gentleman in question can get in. As we hear from Spinky that the green stuff's a little bit slippy. Indeed, the AstroTurf is a bit slippy around Spa, and it will completely take your car off to Narnia if you do run out there. I think he's got a good feel for that now, particularly coming down through turn 12, and I don't think he'll want to do that again. And Ix as well, turn number 11, it can get a little bit greedy in terms of you want to take that AstroTurf, but the further you go out into it, the more unstable the rear end of the car becomes, and you can end up putting it in the wall as a result. Okay, well, I'm getting word that Supremo right now has been able to get his internet back. We're just seeing if he can restart his PS4 and get logged in currently. But we're hearing good news by the sounds of things. Indeed, Jerry R. Driver 1, slidey boy, as you say, and from your experience of racing in EU Division 2 last night. And I think a number of our drivers who as well will now be thinking not only about this season but looking ahead to season 40 in 2 weeks time. Of course, the time trials for season 40 do begin as of next week, and season 40 being a multiple of 10, it means that we will be recalling 3 rounds from past seasons over the course of seasons, I believe season 31 through to season 39. It may in fact be from the entire archive, if you will, but there'll be more on that in the future, which you'll find on Reddit and the official GTSRL webpage. Go to gtsrl.tv for more information. But right now, really, our drivers here and now will be focused on what they can achieve in the 3 races tonight, and that's what we're going to stay focused on. And as we jump on board here with Tamer as he takes us around the circuit, just making his way around for another effectively what is a practice lap, albeit this is an outlap, so he's going to get some heat into the tyres. You do have to wonder for the Egyptian, what is he going to be targeting tonight? Will he be targeting a podium? Will he just be trying to do the best he very can? He has said in the pre-race in his practice sessions that he's been having a bit of difficulty with the combination this week. He's not having difficulty with the KTM as such, although it goes a bit deep there through X. It's more of a case of the circuit we're racing at. It's not a circuit that he's as comfortable with, and as a result of that, I think it's one of those situations whereby Tamer will be looking to just extract the best possible results. But I am hearing once again, very unfortunately right now, that it sounds as though Supremo will not be able to join us tonight, which means we are now down to effectively 5 drivers. Although we are waiting for final confirmation here, he does still have time to try and get it fixed, but this is not sounding too good. But as we see that Tamer's making his way out of the second part of Stavlo now, the long run all the way up towards Blanchimont. Okay, we're about to get our second start check underway. I've just been informed by MDC. So here is the second start check. Our driver's getting another chance here, and I get the feeling our drivers this time will try and rein in some of the little mistakes and start to drive a little bit more within the limits. So as we pan down to the grid for this second start check, we're going to be jumping on board very shortly with our P4 driver of Hellcat as he takes us away around the circuit, or at least for the first sector. So as we jump on board with Hellcat, of course, he's going to be looking for those lights to turn green. And it's lights out and away we go, and you can see Hellcat actually getting the better start versus Tamer there, launching it off the line very nicely. As he comes up in towards turn 1, he's going to be on the racing line, but on the outside and under braking into the first corner, you can see that he goes nice and deep to respect the inside as Tamer goes for a lunge up the inside. As we jump to the exterior camera, you're going to see that effect where Tamer is now back in front, and as we hop back on board with Hellcat very shortly, with Spinky getting the momentum through, you're now going to get a view for what it's like running uphill through Eau Rouge and Radillon, where he's going to be in the dirty air of Spinky Biltong, and he's going to have to balance the car very carefully on the throttle as he gets it just a little bit wrong, as does Spinky there. Both drivers making a very similar mistake, and in the case of Hellcat, just clipping the apex curve of turn number 4 just a tiny bit too soon, and that was enough to destabilise the car, the right-hander, as we see that Brownie right now running away with things up front, and this time not picking up a penalty going through turns 3 through to 5. So as a result, he can now start to unleash a little bit of pace and see whether he's able to keep Heedless behind him. But of course, remember, Heedless right now could be using this as an opportunity to get a feel for what it's like running in the dirty air of another driver over the course of the start check race, because these races do not contribute any points. They have no effect on the outcome of tonight, but they're good warm-up races and good practice races to make sure that you have a bit more knowledge than you came into the session with, particularly that dirty air scenario. Running in the dirty air of another car, particularly in these KTM crossbows, can be an absolute nightmare. And he'll want that information in his head as much as he possibly do. And as they make their way around down through turn number 12 right now, we can see that Heedless 9/10 behind Brownie, not able to get too much closer. In fact, I think Heedless is trying to overdrive the car a little bit to get into that dirty air zone. But you see, he is finally there under braking into 13, or was initially, but as they now come through the chicane, will it be the case that he's still there as he goes sideways through turn number 14 there, and he's definitely inching closer here. And I think through Stavlo, he could have himself in a position where he's going to get a feel for what the slingshot or the slipstream really coming out of the second part of Stavlo is, as he gets sideways out of the first part, but that gives him good rotation into part 2, and you'll see now that he's going to really start to gain on Brownie. Brownie making a little bit of a mistake there coming out of the second part of Stavlo, and as they charge all the way out towards Blanchimont, you'll see, look how close he's getting. The speed is absolutely building as they come up towards the left-hander right now. It's going to be a case, will Heedless lift out, or will he go for the move? He decides to lift out and drift it in instead, and as they make their way into the braking zone for bus stop here, Heedless being made to go the long way round into the right-hander, and they go into that braking zone. Who's going to be braver on the brakes? Brownie decides to go very late on the brakes and completely misses the corner and gets a reset back to the midpoint of the chicane, which means Heedless will take home the win in this second start check ahead of Tamer, who makes it home in P2, and Brownie in P3. Spinky Biltong in P4 having made his way past Hellcat there, although I believe that Spinky may be lifting off a little bit to burn a brief penalty coming out of the final corner. And now he makes his way out of the final corner here, does Hellcat, to complete our start check order. That is our start check race number 2 complete. Congratulations to all of our drivers once again. So with the clock now saying it's 19:59 in the top right corner and our 2 start checks complete, it will be a case of, if we're planning to go ahead, which I believe we are, it will be qualifying in under a minute from now. Perhaps a little bit longer, but we'll be getting qualifying underway in a very short order, and then it will be go, go, go for all of our drivers. 12 minutes to see who can be on pole. But whilst we're waiting, I'm going to take a very quick sip of water here. But really it is the case now, as the clock hits the hour, we will be waiting for qualifying to get going. So I think qualifying here, particularly with the low number of drivers, it will give everybody a good chance to spread out a little bit, but also get some solid laps in. And I think that will give them all the breathing space they would desire around here. We did see drivers tripping over one another a little bit earlier on this week in EU Division 2, and I believe also a little bit in EU Division 1. But here we haven't got enough drivers in order to cause the trip over effect, so it should be a little bit easier for everybody here, and just having that space will work out to their opportunity. But I'm just waiting for word from race control that qualifying is going to get underway. Indeed, qualifying is about to get underway, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get the time of day change, and then at 12 minutes we'll commence. And I think the favourite really with the absence of Supremo has to be Heedless going into this qualifying session, but you never know. As the time of day change occurs then, well, no, not the time of day change, that was just the lap change there, but I assume that MDC is treating that as a time of day change. But I don't think everybody's going to have the countdown in the bottom left hand corner of their screen. So I think some of our drivers may be a little bit confused by that because there wasn't a time of day change, but we are going ahead with qualifying. It's 12 minutes, go, go, go. So everybody is going to be expected to go out there. Heedless jumping, everyone anticipating that was the time of day change. And as he makes his way up the hill here, you're going to see, I think, that he's going to charge around initially after he gets through Radion. But now he's actually broken the car down a little bit to 4th gear. Is this just an attempt to burn some fuel, or is he just going to keep pushing on? I think he's going to keep pushing on, in fact. But we do only have 2 drivers out of the circuit right now. Tama, Hellcat and also Spinky not deciding to go out. They're staying in the pits. And there's the time of day change. I was going to say that's... I think there was going to be something a little bit wrong there. Now it's going to be 12 minutes, go, go, go. That's exactly what I was wondering, H-Boss, because otherwise everybody would be a little bit confused in terms of the timer in the bottom left-hand corner. They'd have to count it as essentially when it hits 14 minutes qualifying is over, but we will now be getting qualifying underway. So here we go then, 12 minutes. Who's going to be on pole by the end of it? Let's find out. As we get another time of day change. And I think that might have actually broken my GT Sport. Oh no, there we go. Because I have had it before which just hung on that screen and then blue screen my PS4, but fortunately for us it hasn't done it this time. Alright, so we have 12 minutes now. It is go, go, go. And let's see who is going to be on pole position. As MDC says they're 12 minutes, go, go, go for real this time. So all of our drivers will be getting out, and the first driver who will be out of the pits this time will be Brownie. Graham Brown makes his way out of the pits then and out onto the circuit, as does Heedless behind him. And it'll be Spinky who follows through most likely very shortly. There he is. Tamer opting to stay in the pits, as does Hellcat, both drivers there. And do keep in mind, nobody here has a grid place penalty at all. All of our drivers will start race number 1 in the position they qualify in right now. I get the feeling that Tamer and Hellcat may be deciding to stay in the pits for a little bit longer, just to give themselves some space out on the circuit. Perhaps not going for the fuel burning, just opting to go out late, although we can see one driver is coming out of the pits, and it is Hellcat who's making his way out of the pits. Tamer still sat in the pit lane. But Brownie right now making his way up through Lake Om, and we can see that Heedless on our circuit map is also doing the same, albeit he's approximately about 8 seconds behind as it currently stands. The drivers giving themselves enough space here to be able to not trip over one another, but at the same time get around the circuit and get a good number of laps in for qualifying. Now, given the lap time here is a little bit under 3 minutes, we're expecting most likely 3 fast laps maximum from our drivers. Alternatively, perhaps 2 fast laps if they do decide to come into the pits and put on a fresh pair of tyres. I would say personally, if you were going to gamble it, given the number of drivers available in the EU Division 3 tonight, we've only got the 5 here so far, and perhaps if Supremo is able to get his internet connection fixed, there'll be 6 drivers, but he'll be starting at the back, as Brownie makes a little bit of mistake there going wide through turn number 12 and almost beaches it on the apex. I would say personally, you can afford to really go for a fuel save here. Not a fuel save, go for a lot of fuel burning and gamble it all in one lap, because at worst you're going to be starting down in P5. You haven't got that much of a field to worry about here, so it's not a case that the fighting is going to cause major issues. But still, they all press round, and we can see that right now all of our drivers seemingly making their way around at full pelt, although Spinky deciding to go for a little bit of fuel burning there into the medium speed chicane that is 13 and 14. So I think Spinky's got the idea. He's now giving himself a little bit of space, as we see that Tamer has made his way out of the pits as well. But really, the only driver doing any fuel burning is Spinky right now, as we can see that Heedless is making his way out of Stavlo Part 2, and now as he makes his way out towards Blanchimont here, he's going to be full pelt. As we see, Supremo joins the lobby, so we do have the Mexican driver in here. Now, will his internet connectivity be able to hold? That will be a big question, but we will find out, because he's joining qualifying with 3 minutes having already passed by the time he gets out there. But let's jump on board with Brownie then. The British driver is going to be the first driver to go onto a flying lap, and let's see what he's able to achieve. So as he comes out of the bus stop chicane, then across our timeline, accelerating up through the gears here, heading up into 4th gear, and then potentially 5th gear as he comes into the braking zone for 1. It'll just be up in 5th gear right at the end there. And as he makes his way through the first corner, a nice run through La Source, that a very well planted run through the hairpin corner, and now it's the long charge up the hill. You're going to have to be brave here, and you're going to have to really balance the car on the throttle as he makes his way through 3, 4 and 5. Here we go into left-hander of 3. He makes his way up the hill then, and you'll see he'll balance the throttle here through turn 4. The rear end starting to come loose as we get the camber change, but a very steady end to the run through Rouge and Radion, and now he comes round onto the Kemmel straight. He's got the long run down towards turn number 6 now. Sector 1 complete come the braking zone of Lake Om. How will he do as he goes into sector 2? Well, as he comes up to the braking zone then, braking at approximately that 100 metre board, coming down through the gears, nice and gradually down into 3rd gear as he hits the apex of turn 6 before flicking the car over to turn 7, and now he's got to flick the car to left to the right, but he decides to stay in the centre instead, not widening his apex turn in there, and as a result that will cost him approximately a 10th and a half as he makes his way down towards turn number 9 now. The downhill right hander where he's going to stick it in 3rd gear and try and hook the car on the apex curve so it doesn't drift away from him. But as the car starts to drift away, you can see that he's got to fight to get the nose under control, and now pushing his way into it, he goes into 4th gear and staying in 4th gear rather than opting to come down to 3rd, staying in the higher gear to get rid of a gear change there, which would have put him at the top end of the RPM band for 3rd gear, which he wouldn't have wanted. And now coming down through turn number 12, you'll see that he's gone in a bit deep, and he's had to downshift to 4th and stamp on the brake to stabilise the car. He's got it back under control, however, Brownlee. This is quite composed. Despite the fact he's made little mistakes here and there, he's very composed, and he knows how to get the car back under control as he now comes down into 13, and you can see in 4th gear just running on the apex there before switching over to turn 14. A little bit wide, the car drifting away from him once again, but again keeping it stable, just 9. He can't get on the power as soon as he would like as he now comes down to Stavlo, and as he makes his way through there, downshift to 3rd to get the car rotated before upshifting to 4th, and now he's going to balance the throttle round through turn number 16 as he makes his way all the way along the straight now, charging all the way up towards Blanchimont. Up he goes, upshifting through the gears up into 5th gear, and now he's making his way further and further in towards the very difficult left hander here where it's all about being brave, and as he comes comes into it. He's going to use the full width of the circuit and tucks it in very nicely there and gets it all the way through the corner before now coming up towards the bus stop chicane. It's a composed lap. Can he nail this final braking point as he brakes at approximately 130 metres? He's gone a bit deep initially, but he uses the downshift to third to stop the car, and it works out nicely as he makes his way out of the bus stop chicane. And this is going to be our opening qualifying lap. It is a 2-minute 42.2, and we can see further down the field by comparison right now, Heedless making his way out the chicane, and this is looking a relatively good lap from the Scotsman as he makes his way across the line. It is a 2-minute 41.8 there. No, it's not a 41.8. That's a glitch on our screen. That was a 2-minute 44, so not able to pit Brownie in the first instance there, but I reckon Heedless may have an ace up his sleeve in the fact that he could have been doing some fuel burning on that one. As we see Spinky coming around to go onto a lap. He's been doing some fuel burning. This is not an indicative lap. I think he's had a bit of a disastrous lap, in fact, and he's just simply burning off a penalty there effectively, and now coming across to start another lap. And Hellcat coming through right now. What can the British driver do here as he makes his way across the line? And it is going to be a 2-minute 49, a 2-minute 50.1 there, and then we've got Tamer who's coming around right now through Stavlo Part 2 and up towards Blanchimont here. What can the Egyptian driver do as we see that Supremo is out of the circuit right now? So we do have 6 drivers, and he charges all the way out towards Blanchimont, and with half of the qualified session to go already, Brownie having set the provisional pole pace of a 2:42.2, but we do reckon there's going to be at least one 2:41 out there today. Tamer comes down towards the braking zone for bus stop then, slamming it down on the brakes and just gradually coming down through those gears, trailing off the brakes there, and he's going to build up that throttle for the part of the final corner. And as he accelerates out there, he went a little bit down low in the gears there, dropping down to third, well, dropping up to third gear, but losing all of the RPM, and that's a 2:47.1, not a bad lap. I think Tamer knows there's more out there as we see that Supremo now is on a lap, and we jump on board with the Mexican driver as he comes to the end of Sector 1 here, and he's already 3.5 tenths faster than anybody else in Sector 1, but he goes way too deep into Lake Com, and as a result, or has he gone deep, we're getting quite a bit of lag from the driver right now, but this is not looking the best run through Lake Com either way, as we see that Supremo now coming out of turn 8, and we're going to go to the exterior camera instead. It may be a little bit easier to track for you folks. It definitely will be for me as we see coming down in towards turn 9 right now, and Supremo having to balance that throttle of course through turn 9, and now coming up into X here, making his way through turn number 10. Oh, sorry, turn number 11 I should really say, and as he comes out of X, getting it nicely planted, and now charging all the way down towards turn number 12. As he comes into the corner, will he be able to nail this one properly? I suspect he will, though. He goes a little bit deep under braking there, but gets the car under control, much like what happened to Brownie, going a little bit deep initially, but then starting to pull the car back in as he makes his way in towards the chicane now. Turns 13 and 14 away here, and you'll see just how aggressive he is coming into the corners, deciding to go as deep as possible before braking and using the downshift to third there in order to stop the car more aggressively. And now coming up towards Stavlo. What's it going to be as he comes across the sector timing at the end of Stavlo Part 1? It's going to be a 2-minute 0.9. No, it's not going to be. In fact, we're not going to get any sector times there because we're getting a glitch on our timing screens. Thank you very much, GT Sport. But what we can say is that Supremo is looking relatively fast right now as the Mexican, albeit with that mistake he made up at Lake Com much earlier on in the lap. I do suspect this may not be as strong a lap as what it could be, as we do see that Brownie improving to a 2:42.001, so almost into those 2:41s right now for our provisional pole sitter. But Supremo now coming up towards bus stop. Will he be able to nail this perfectly for the first time of asking under the qualifying session? He comes in, he hits the first part very well, then goes into that second part, clips the apex curb there and then some, and coming out the final corner, this is looking a good lap, and it is going to be a 2:43.0, putting in P2, 1 second off of our pole sitter right now, as we see Heedless making his way into Lake Com for the 4th time, and we've only got 2.5 minutes remaining in this qualifying session right now, so all of our drivers will need to get a move on as we see Heedless drifting his way there through the final part of Lake Com, and now coming downhill towards the very difficult right-hander that is turn number 10. As he makes his way into the right hand, then we should point out that Heedless are doing a very nice job of keeping that car stable through there as he comes down in towards X right now. Really starting to attack the circuit is the Scotsman. I really think he's starting to feel he needs to get a move on here, particularly with Supremo being out there and racing against him. Remember, it's only 1.5 points between these two in the Drivers' Championship going into tonight. Heedless does not have the comfort of the fact that Supremo wouldn't be racing. He is racing and needs to take him as a threat, and the Scotsman indeed doing so as a intelligently as possible. As we do say hello to Canado in the chat, and we hope you're doing well, and we then look back towards what Heedless is achieving as he gets a little bit too much on the apex there of turn 13 and ends up over-rotating the car and clipping a bollard. That was going to be putting his heart through his chest. That must have been pounding like mad in the fact that he almost had it perfect, but he just went too sideways at the last possible moment, and he will have one more lap, will Heedless, but this next lap, he is the fastest of anybody so far in the opening two sectors, but Heedless right now will be on worn tyres, and he must know that the next lap is going to be even more difficult because he will have to wear, particularly on those rear tyres that are starting to show considerable signs of graining, and when you start to get that will make the rear end of these cars very difficult to drive indeed. As he makes his way through Blanchimont, and I think this is going to be his last attempt at getting a 241 unless he's absolutely going to nail it on those worn tyres on the final qualifying lap. He comes into bus stop here. This is looking a very composed entry. How about the exit, however? It takes two to tango, of course. There's an entry and exit to every corner, and Heedless not doing that too bad on the exit, but a little bit sideways coming out the corner. It's a 242.023. It's not enough, as we see that Brownie, in fact, has just gone fastest of anyone with a 241.547. So I think Heedless must have been thinking to himself, I've got close to that bar, and then Brownie raises it even higher. Now that gap is 4.5 tenths to everybody else in the field. And what can Supremo do? Well, we can see that the Mexican is on a personal best right now. Will this be enough to get him into provisional P2, or will he have to go something further in his final qualifying lap? He is coming towards the end of his lap, as we see Spinky Biltong now raises the bar to a 241.4, a cracking lap from the British driver there, and definitely everybody now stepping up right at the end of the qualifying session to raise that bar for provisional pole. Will Supremo do the same here? He comes across the line, and it's a 242.7 there, so it's not enough. Supremo not improving too much, and he's still got a long way to go. 1.2 seconds is the delta between him and pole, and it's 7 tenths of a second for Heedless, but he has made it onto a final lap, as we do see that right now Hellcat coming across the line here, and I think this is going to be an improvement. It's an improvement to a 247.5, which will not be enough to get him off of the bottom position of our grid, but it's still a rather competitive time, particularly versus his rival of Tamir, and we look forward to seeing what Hellcat can do in the race. Of course, he's probably got more pace locked up for the race, as we see that our Egyptian driver makes his way out of the final corner, and as he comes across the line here, it's going to be a 244.6, not enough to get him into the fight for the top four, but definitely still a solid lap, and it's a 3-second gap between himself and Hellcat, which he'll be most pleased with. Now, so our drivers still making their way round. Our first driver to next. Oh, goodness me! And I hear that Heedless has just spun out on the on the exit of X there. He just went a little bit too wide onto the AstroTurf, and the car got swept away from him. So Heedless will not be improving as he pulls off circuit here to let Supremo come through. But right now, that means really Heedless can at best start in P3, unless Supremo's got something in reserve. But who will be on pole? Will it be Spinky? Will it be Brownie? Or will it be Supremo? Spinky right now leading by only 7/100ths of a second, and we can see that Brownie making his way through Blanchimont. He isn't up on Spinky on this lap so far, at least that's what our timing screens are telling us, but as he makes his way down into the braking zone for the bus stop here, has he got something in reserve as he really clatters the curb there, the first start bus stop, and the car gets carried away with him, but he seems to hook it up relatively well, and as he now comes across that line, it is going to be a 241.8. It's not an improvement, and that means that he is out of the running for pole position. Can Spinky raise the bar even higher? Let's wait and see as he comes up towards Blanchimont right now. He's not purple, so as a result, I don't think this is going to be an improvement based on the first two sectors, but we will wait and see as he makes his way out of Blanchimont and out towards bus stop. We're going to see that if he can improve, he's going to be raising this bar even higher, and it's going to be in a low 241. I don't think we're going to be seeing any 2-minute 40s tonight. It's going to be low 241s as best. He comes out of bus stop then, and will it be enough to improve on his already provisional best time? It is a 2-minute 41.733. It's not enough, so the only driver who could potentially pip him is Supremo, who is on a personal best right now, but is it going to be enough to get him up there with Heedless having that disastrous moment in the final lap of qualifying for himself? Supremo comes out the final corner. I don't think it's enough for pole, but the Mexican comes across the line, and it's a 242.0, so only 400ths off a pipping Heedless to P3, but that is your qualified session, ladies and gentlemen, so I can now confirm that starting on a pole tonight will be Spinky Biltong, the British driver, getting on pole by only 700ths of a second in the end, ahead of Brownie 192, the British driver, doing a very good job in the qualifying session there and almost having that pole position. It's then a further 4.5 tenths back to Heedless, who qualifying in P3. The Scotsman will be very happy with that, knowing that his teammate is on pole, and as a result of that, he's got less pressure on himself in terms of the Drivers' Championship, although he will need to get a move on. And then the second row of the grid will be finished off by Supremo GT, it'll be Tamer, and then last but not least will be Hellcat. So that's going to be our starting order for race number 1, and now we've only got a minute or so to get underway for the race. So place your bets. Who is going to be our winner come the end of it? I do think there's going to be a battle between Spinky and Brownie, but do not count out any of the 4 behind them, because what I suspect will happen is that over the course of the opening lap, we are going to see a lot of close-knit racing between our drivers, particularly from Uruj and Radion, and as a result, when they come up to Lake Com, we will see a change in the order, you betcha. But as we now pan our cameras back, we are waiting for the countdown of the race. And a close qualifying session there, particularly between our 2 drivers on that front row. There seems to be a little bit more pace in them compared to everybody else, but of course, what you have in qualifying is a very different pace from what you may have in the race. And we are hearing that Spinky made a little bit of a disaster of the final sector, as we also hear from Lewis, and we're about to get underway with race number 1. Hello to you, Lewis. I hope you're doing well. That the countdown is now set. We've got 4 laps. Who's going to be our winner come the end of it in race number 1? Let's find out. So as we pan down to the grid, we can see it's Spinky Bilton on the left, Brownie on the right, behind them Heedless and Tamer, but we can see that Supremo... What on earth has happened to our qualifying grid? Has there been any grid penalties there? But I thought Supremo qualified in P4. I'm not sure what's gone wrong there. But we're going to get underway nonetheless. And it's lights out and away we go. All of our drivers getting a relatively good start, although you could see immediately Tamer getting a little bit of wheel spin off the line, and Supremo able to capitalise on that as Spinky goes defensive in the centre of the circuit into turn 1. Brownie looking for that cutback line, but Heedless already alongside him going in there as Hellcat goes a little bit wide there. Not through the fault of another driver by looks of things, but Spinky, Heedless and Brownie all chasing one another down towards turn number 3, and you can see that Heedless already side by side with his teammate. Now surely they've got to agree on getting into an order, and it is Heedless ahead of Spinky right now, and I think the 2 of them will recognise the fact that Heedless is battling for the championship, although Spinky is as well, and Heedless getting it very wrong over the hill, as does Hellcat, although he rally crosses across the AstroTurf, coming through turn 5 here, and as they make their way down the Kemmel Straight, you can see Heedless immediately having a burner penalty, and with Spinky, Brownie, and also Supremo coming through the mix, this opens things up massively as the Mexican driver is on the inside of Spinky down into Lake Com, and as they come into turn number 6 then, you can see that Spinky knocked a tiny bit wide, but he's got the inside versus Brownie through turn 7. Now they go up in towards turn number 8 here, and it's all kicking off already, and Heedless now trying to find his way back into P3. He's going to do it around the outside of Brownie for the final part of Lake Com. Very brave stuff there for the Scottish driver versus his fellow countryman, either Britain, as they make their way down the hill now in towards the very difficult combination of the extended right-hander of turn 9 and then up into X. You'll see that Spinky is really starting to try and put a push on here to get after Supremo, but Supremo is somewhere in front as Tamer goes wide, as does Hellcat, both of them out of X. They're going very deep through the corner, not used to those cold tyres on lap number 1, and Supremo now starting to be reeled in a little bit by Spinky, but remember it's a very difficult corner here. It's turn number 12 and Heedless gets it very deep, and I'm not sure there's a tiny bit of contact between himself and Brownie. I think he might have actually opened the steering, Heedless, to stay out of the way of the drivers coming through. But he's dropped all the way down to P5. Heedless having a very difficult start to tonight's proceedings, and it's not going his way. And as a result, with Supremo being reeled in by Spinky right now, this is really going to open the opportunity potentially for Spinky to have a crack at the Drivers' Championship, as we see that Brownie and Tamer now following through Stavlo, and Heedless on the back of them. Hellcat a little bit further behind, but Supremo trying to pull away a little bit from Spinky as they come out the second part of Stavlo and now charge up towards Blanchimont. And you can see that Supremo, in fact, is really rocketing away right now as they go charging down towards Blanchimont here. And meanwhile, in the battle for P3, we've got Tamer trying to get close as possible to the back of Brownie. I don't think he's close enough to an effective pass here into the bus stop chicane, but this will be solid for the Egyptian driver. This will give him the confidence as we see Helis going wide out of Blanchimont there. He's not having a good time right now, is the Scotsman, as he comes down towards the bus stop chicane. And Tamer goes for a very deep lunge in towards bus stop there. I think a little bit too opportunistic. He's just got to cool it down a little bit. But after lap number 1, it's the Mexican of Supremo leading by 1.1 seconds ahead of Speaky, followed by Brownie in P3, Tamer in P4, Heedless in P5, but catching on Tamer. And in P6, it's Hellcat as we look back to our battle for P4, and we can see that Heedless getting closer to the back of the Egyptian driver, but he's got to pick the right place to do it. And I think what Heedless is going to try and do, he's going to try and get it as Hellcat goes a bit too deep into La Source. We can see that Tamer right now under a lot of pressure as the camera pans around from Heedless, and Heedless trying to go round him initially, but then backing out of it and thinking, you know what, why don't I use his pull along the Kemmel Straight to give me the time back and I can get past him there. But to do so, he's got to make it safely through Ruja Radion. He does indeed, and now Heedless is going to be in the driving seat, if you excuse the pun, as he makes his way through 6 and up towards Lake Om. They make their way down right now, and you can see that Heedless getting ever closer. He's going to be looking for the move here into the braking zone of Lake Om. He pulls out of the slipstream and he goes into that braking zone, but Tamer going deeper than Heedless on the brakes here. The Egyptian driver being very brave on the brakes, and I can tell you right now up front, it's the case that Speaky is dropping off of Supremo, who's pulled the gap open to 1.6 seconds as they make their way down in towards turn number 10 for the second time of asking. And you look back and you can see that Tamer right now just simply holding off Heedless. The Scotsman not able to find a way past, but Tamer goes very deep. He's gone way too deep out of turn number 10, and as a result of that, we can see that Heedless now making his way past. The move is done, although he does clatter the apex curve there, and Heedless as a result is sent very wide. And I think going for X, that's going to be a half-second penalty for his troubles as he makes his way down towards turn number 12. He doesn't get the penalty. He's lost enough time as is, as he tries to get the car under control, but the dirt on the tyres means he goes wide out of turn number 12, and he just can't seem to find that consistency in that rhythm right now. As we look up in front and we see that Supremo opening that gap up. That gap is getting bigger and bigger, literally by every single corner, and Spinky's got no response to it right now. Now, as we look further back down the order, we can see that Heedless once again really trying to put that pressure on Tamer. We in fact ride on board with Tamer and look back from the Egyptian's car right now as we go through the first part of Stavlo here, and watch how Heedless is going to try and get the best possible run out of Stavlo too. He'll want to get as close as possible. Going through the corner, it was 5/10 of a second the gap, but you see Heedless getting affected by the dirty air a little bit there, so he sweeps out a little bit wider. At first has to lift out the throttle, but now as they both start to build speed up towards 5th gear and make their way out towards Blanchimont, this is where he's going to start to gain, because he'll have the tow. And as they make their way into the left-hander, let's see if Heedless is able to get ever closer through here. As Tamer goes a little bit deep, he gets some understeer, and Heedless has got a huge amount of momentum this time, and he makes his way down to the corner, but he gets a little bit of a tail slapper there. He just can't keep the rear end stabilised, can the Scottish driver, and as a result of that, he just cannot get a pass done. Heedless really struggling here to keep the car under control, and as a result, I think he feels that he's got the pace to beat Tamer, and I think we reckon that as well based on what he's able to achieve and qualifying, but the Egyptian driver just able to keep that car pointing in a straight line where Heedless cannot right now, and it must be so frustrating because he's probably thinking to himself, oh, for goodness sake, I just need to be able to get past this guy in front and I can go hunting. But right now this is the worst possible place he can be, and he's trying to push as hard as he can, and perhaps he just needs to take the pressure off himself right now and cool it down a little bit. As we jump on board with the Scottish driver once again, you can see Tamer having a very difficult run through Radion. This is the closest Heedless has ever been to affecting a pass, but as we go around the outside now through turn number 6, it's the long round down towards Lake Om, and we can see that it's a drag race, and Heedless has got a little bit of speed here as he's being given just enough room on the outside into Lake Om. Into turn 7 they go, and he tries to find his way round, but Tamer says no and stays there on the brakes, and we can see that Heedless tries to cut back on him, but into the left-hander of turn 8 and now into the right-hander of turn 9. Tamer just simply becoming an immovable obstacle, and as a result the Egyptian driver, through very fair racing it should be pointed out, is defending very well as they come down to turn 10, and again on a battle of the brakes, Tamer is just that much stronger on the brakes, but he goes deep, but he's able to find grip where others cannot on the outside of turn 10, and as they go into X, again it's a repeat of the story from the previous lap. We can see that Heedless is just not able to get the run out of the corners, and Tamer as a result is able to keep in there just a little bit longer. And you have to imagine that if this continues, that means Heedless will be starting at P5, and he's going to have to completely change his strategy for race number 2 as they make their way out of 12. And again, note how Heedless has the momentum. Now, surely he's got to go late on the brakes somewhere around the circuit to get it done, because otherwise Tamer's going to beat him. And there's contact there, as we can see that Heedless getting the better run through 13. He carried so much more speed, but Tamer's always there, and he's just simply taking his racing line. And as a result, Heedless has got to be inventive and find a way through. Now, what can you do in the Scotsman's position? Personally, for me, what I'd think about is you've got to try and find a way of getting a good run out of Stavlo 2 here, and you can see that Tamer just a little bit wide there, and there's a bit of contact on Heedless, but Heedless is able to hold his momentum, and this is where he needs to be. He needs to be on the inside in Blanchimont, because they go side by side here. He'll be able to dictate the racing line through the corner, and if Tamer wants to hang around the outside, he's going to have to lift, but in fact, Heedless in the end has to back out of it, as Tamer just simply takes the line. The Egyptian not backing off. He's got balls as still the man has, as they make their way down towards turn, well, the bus stop chicane, I should say. I can't remember the turn number off the top of my head. Let's just give it its proper name, and we can see that Tamer right now just doing everything he can in order to hold on, and this is fantastic stuff. As we see up front, the gap between our race leaders, 3.5 seconds, it's stabilised somewhat. In fact, I'd say that Spinky has pulled it down a little bit over the last couple of laps, but as we look behind, we see Brownie not able to get in this fight, and Tamer once again, as they go through Les Sources and now go all the way up the hill, or start to begin their ascent, you can just see how the Egyptian driver just does not seem to have a chink in his armour right now. Everything he does is working, and Heedless just does not have enough tools in his arsenal to find a way around. Now, he's the closest he's ever been, Heedless, as they go up the hill here, and you'll note that this time, in fact, what he's done, he's backed off a little bit initially out of the run in order to give himself the best possible slipstream down the Kemmel Straight. Now, Tamer, of course, has the right to go defensive, but he puts the car in the middle of the circuit and starts to creep out to left, and Heedless, as a result, trying to fight every which way around the Egyptian. They go into the braking zone for Lacombe again, and there's no way through, and instead Tamer just simply holding on, and Heedless having to ride over the bollards there, and that's going to cost him a little bit of time. But you can see, again, look how Heedless is so strong through that combination, but every time he comes up behind the Egyptian, but I think this time he's timed it right. As they come down the hill here, they're going to be side by side, but Tamer going deep on the brakes, and he goes for that deep line once again, but this time Heedless is there, and you can see he's all over the back of Tamer as they come down to X. He's finally done it, I think. There's a little bit of contact as Tamer tried to turn in, but Heedless, after 2.5 laps of being in that position, has found a way past, but Tamer's coming back on the inside into turn number 12, as they go into the braking zone here, he has to back out of it. Heedless has got the racing line, and I think now the Scotsman has finally got it done. It took him a long time to do it, but he's up to P4. Can the Egyptian come back at him? Well, we'll have to wait and see, but I think Heedless will be breathing a sigh of relief right now, thinking to himself, right, it took me a long time, but I finally got it done. Oh, and then he goes very sideways through turn 14. This could be an opportunity for Tamer to come back at him, but meanwhile, looking up front, I can tell you that Supremo is starting to lose a little bit of pace, or just lifting off the pace, as the Mexican has now only got a 2.5 second gap to Spinky here, and now they make their way out towards Blanchimont, and you can see that the Mexican not worrying, he's not pushing the car too hard. I think he's focusing on just getting it home, as we know that Heedless is being chased, but not close enough as Tamer. So as he makes his way into the bus stop chicane, having had a lot of concerns about whether he could join, Supremo begins the night with a win in race number 1, and it's exactly how he would have wanted to start it, and he starts to extend his championship lead as we go to race number 2. Spinky Biltong in P2, and it will be Brownie holding on to that podium position. A great job by the British driver there, and coming out of the final corner right now, it took him a long time, but a very hard fought and well earned P4, and Tamer unfortunate to lose out to P5 right at the end, just losing out a little bit on the final lap. And then it will be Hellcat, who's just making his way through Stavlo right now. He makes his way through the first part. He's going to be coming home in P6 as he makes his way around the remaining sector of the circuit. Hellcat not having the pace right now to match up to the other 5 drivers, but still staying in there and getting the points as is right to. And it's great to see the sportsmanship for the British driver. Let's follow him home, ladies and gentlemen, because it's all about the taking part that counts. Winning's one thing, but taking part's an entirely different thing. He makes his way out towards Blanchimont then, and he goes a little bit wide there. I think the car's just sweeping away from him with those ward tyres as he makes his way through the left-hander. That car definitely drifting from left to right. Oh, goodness me. And he tries to rally cross it back onto the circuit, and he does indeed. Hellcat having a very difficult time with the car on the final lap, and now he makes his way through bus stop, gets it much more composed and sedate this time, and now he powers his way out the final corner, but not without making a small visit to the AstroTurf there as he completes our race order for race number 1. Congratulations to all of our drivers, but to our race winner, Supremo Tigon 5 from Mexico. So that is race number 1 complete, folks, and with Shu's decisions still pending, of course, here are your race results. So Supremo there picking up the win, 2.4 seconds ahead of Spinky Biltong, and the podium being rounded off by Brownie 192, finishing a further 5 seconds down on Spinky. Our top 5 being completed by Heedless in that classic battle with Tamer there, picking up the P4 and Tamer rounding off the top 5. The fastest lap, a 2:40.967. Pardon me, going to Supremo Tigon 5 on lap number 2, and I believe, in fact, that is the fastest lap we have seen all evening from any of our drivers so far, him finding some pace over the course of the race. Now, in terms of how does that pander out in our championship, of course, well, with that so far, what I can tell you is that gives our Mexican driver a little bit of a points advantage right now over the rest of the field. And if you give me 2 seconds, I can clarify how much of a points advantage that is. That points advantage now being in the region of what is, I believe, 4.5 points ahead of Heedless right now. So that gap has opened up a little bit as a result. That was race number 1, of course. We've got race number 2 coming at you very shortly. It'll be another 4 laps. And in turn, the gap between Spinky now and his teammate, Spinky being in P3 going into this one, has dropped down to 6 points. So Spinky could snatch P2 as of yet. As we pan down to the pit lane, once again we can see that Hellcat making his way out onto the circuit. And for those wondering, by the way, don't we normally have a rule about, well, we're going to be getting at race number 2 underway. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen, at race number 2 coming at you, another 4 laps. Who's going to be our winner by the end of it? Let's find out. So as we pan down to the grid for the second time tonight, we can see Supremo on the left-hand side. Beside him, it's Spinky Biltong looking to get the jump on him. Brownie starts off on the second row, but watch out for Heedless. What can he do this time, starting in P4? And it's lights out and away we go, and all of our drivers getting a reasonable start, although Tamer getting a little bit of wheel spin initially, dropping him down to the back of the field as Hellcat jumps him on the start line. We can see that Supremo getting a good launch, and as a result holding on to the lead as Brownie goes up the inside of Spinky into P2. But for how long, as we see Hellcat goes very deep out of the source, and as a result will drop down to the back of the order. They all form into single line immediately. All of the drivers this time respect to the fact they all need to chase after the race leader as early as possible and keep the pressure up. So none of them going for cheeky passes in the uphill run, and as they make their way over the crest of the hill right now, we can see that Brownie chasing after Supremo here, but he's got a lot of pressure from Heedless, who's already up into P3 and got the move done on Spinky through turn 1, and I think Spinky decided not to fight it too hard, and Heedless is going to try and be on the battle of the brakes versus Brownie. They're side by side into the braking zone of Lakecom, and as they come into the right hander, who's going to hold on? I think it's going to be Brownie, who goes a little bit deeper. He goes deep into the first part of Lakecom, but then snaps it back, but Heedless cuts back on the inside and closes closes the door on Brownie nice and early, but he has to show a little bit of respective race room there as Brownie tried to come back at him, but Brownie wasn't able to get the car stabilised enough to get the pass done. As we can see, our top 5 drivers all chasing after the race leader right now, whereas our P6 driver Hellcat just falling a little bit back right now, not to his detriment of course, that's his pace, as we note that he is pushing on and trying to chase after Supremo. He needs to get the win here, at least finish P2 to put himself in the prime position to come back at Supremo come the final race of tonight. As we note that behind him, Brownie is trying to catch up and is really starting to put the pace down here, and Brownie, remember, just missed out on pole by a very small margin as he makes his way down through turn number 12. They all charge down the hill right now, and Spinky, what with Brownie having that disastrous run off of the curb there out of turn 12, you can see that Spinky just getting the move naturally done, and he's up into P3. And of course, Heedless will be very grateful for that, because now he has a rear gunner in the form of his teammate who can support him as they make their way chasing after the leader. But behind Brownie and Tamer, both of them staying in the front, staying in the hunt I should say, for the podium as they continue to make their way around through the first part of Stavlo into the second part, and then we have Hellcat coming through as well. As they all come out of Stavlo Part 2, then you can see that looking back from Heedless's car right now, that his pursuers are falling further and further back, and that rear gunner of Spinky is going to be invaluable to him as Heedless tries to catch up to our race leader. The gap between the two of them only about 8/10 of a second right now, and he will of course want to utilise that as best as possible and try and get it down to that 7.5 so that way he's able to benefit from the tow. But of course, to benefit from the tow, it's worth pointing out you need to have it at the right point in time, and you don't want it through the more difficult corners. But one thing we can see is that Supremo having a much better run out of the final corner. So Supremo leads by 1.2 seconds ahead of Heedless, followed by Spinky Biltong, who's 1.5 seconds down. Then it's a second down to Brownie, followed by Tamer, who's 1.5 seconds down. And then last but not least is Hellcat, 8 seconds off of the pack, chasing after our leader as he makes his way up towards the source. But in the meantime, I can point out that whilst Supremo had the better run out of Bus Stop, we can see that Heedless has the better run out of La Source. So he gets it going to charge all the way up the hill here. And as they make their way over the course of Radion and Rouge, you can see that Supremo picking up a half-second penalty, and he's going to have to burn that immediately. That's going to cost him a lot of momentum, but he did gain a huge cut there, and as a result, I don't think, in fact, Heedless is going to gain too much by that, given that Supremo gained so much time through the run of Rouge and Radion. I'm not saying that he gained that time through the cut there, folks, but it's just the fact he had so much time over Heedless come the top of the hill that it seems as though nothing has changed, as we note that Brownie and Spinky, well, Spinky, in fact, has had a bit of a disaster. What has happened to Spinky? Well, Spinky must have got something very wrong coming over the course of turns 3 through to 5, because Brownie was not ahead of him, but now he is. So Spinky's got it all to do again. He's going to have to try and catch up to Brownie and get the pass back on to get back onto that podium right now. But that is a surprise as Brownie bounces off of one of the little bollards there coming out of X, and as a result of that, that will cost him some time in terms of the run down towards turn number 12. And you can see up front that Heedless not able to catch up to Supremo, as Brownie, meanwhile, is really being pressured by Spinky. In fact, that gap has really started to come down, and Spinky looking aggressive here. He's looking feisty for a potential move down in towards turn number 13. Can he find it under braking? No, he can't. And you'll note that Spinky has broken early here to try and get Brownie to go deep through 13, but that's going to set him up for a defensive line into 14, as we see Spinky trying to cut a little too much of the apex of 14, and the bollards saying no to him as a result, as they now make their way into Stavlo. And I think it's going to be a case where Spinky's going to have to get himself set up for going for the move up into Bus Stop right now, but he needs a good run out of the second part of Stavlo, and you can see that Spinky has not got the momentum on his side right now as they come onto this run up towards Blanchimont. And we note that further back, I believe that Hellcat has had a little bit of a spin coming out of turn 14. We're hearing from trackside right now, but focusing on this battle for P3 for the time being, we do note that Brownie is seemingly doing enough right now to hold off Spinky as we jump to the external cameras once again. And you'll note that our leaders are not too far up the road as they make their way down into Bus Stop. And will Spinky be able to get it done on the brakes here into Bus Stop? He's too far back, but he can close up that gap as they go on to lap number 3. That, I'm sure, the two Britons right now battling for the final podium spot, as we see Tamer just a little bit out of reach right now at the rear of your picture as they came through Bus Stop. Now as they charge across the line to be in lap number 3, let's take a look back at our leaders, and we can see that gap has stabilised in the region of about 1.5 seconds, albeit Heedless getting the better run into La Source, but not getting as strong an exit. And we know that Brownie getting caught on the exit curb there, the yellow sausage just riding it a little too aggressively, but he was able to get the throttle down and maintain this momentum this time. But he's got to be wary of the wheels getting caught there and how it can destabilise the car. as they make their way up the hill then. No mistakes from Brownie or Spinky by looks of things. Both drivers getting a relatively good run, as we can also see that Tamer getting a good run over the crest of the hill right now. And as they make their way down the Kemmel Straight for the third time of asking, we look up to our leader, and in fact what has happened to Heedless? He's had a disastrous run. So as he made his way up the hill, he went sideways through turn number 4, and the car completely snapped on him, and he was very fortunate to glance the wall there on the right hand side out of turn 5. That could have been near fatal for his chances of finishing on the podium, but it has dropped him all the way down to P4, and now once again he's got to go hunting. It's really unfortunate for Heedless. He just cannot seem to get a break here at the Spa circuit in the KTM. It just seems to be halting him every so often, and of course for Supremo right now, he'll be pleased as punch with this, because this is giving him the opportunity to pull away in the championship lead and pretty much not seal the deal come the final race, but give him all the advantages that he will want going into the final race of tonight. We can see again Heedless getting a half-second penalty for track limits at X, and then going deep through turn number 12 with the dirt on the tyres from going wide at X as well. Heedless having a nightmare of a race so far. It's gone from good to bad to worse, and it's just getting worse every lap right now. He's got to find a way back into this, because right now Brownie is leading the hunt after leader, albeit that gap is 5 seconds and continuing to increase. So Brownie really the best of the rest right now, just keeping it clean and not making any major mistakes. And he's doing a fantastic job, is Brownie, of just simply holding on to those positions and really just keeping it nice and consistent. That's the one thing you want around a circuit in a combination with a car is so unstable. It's the consistency that counts. We saw it in round number 1 when Tamer pulled off that podium in race number 1, and now we'll see it again. This will be back-to-back podiums for Brownie if he's able to continue this streak as he makes his way through Blanchimont. Once again, going perfectly through the line there, but Spinky getting a much better run initially, but then starting to lose out a little bit in the final stage of braking in towards the bus stop chicane here, and we can see that Brownie just continuing to maintain that gap as they come onto the final lap, and our race leader is already all the way down towards La Source. We can see it as we pan the camera down. We know that's Supremo at the front of your picture, and then we've got Brownie at the rear of your picture being chased by the rest of the hunting pack, and we'll note that Brownie right now, that gap of 1.1 seconds over Spinky. Will Spinky be able to reel it in? Let's wait and see if he's able to do so, of course, as they both make their way out of the source, and now the long run towards the hill and then over the top of it before the Kemmel Straight as they make their way down here. What can Spinky do? Well, he's not in the slipstream for the Kemmel Straight here, so he's got to have a good run for Rouge and Radion, and then just hope that Brownie does not have a good run by comparison, although we can see that Spinky did have the stronger run. In fact, he's gained 2/10 through that run. Will it be enough? I don't think it's going to be enough to get him in an attacking position, but it should be enough to get him close to the point of slipstream under braking here, and we can see Brownie doing a little bit of weaving on the straight, just trying to avoid that toe from kicking in. And as they go into the braking zone here, we'll note that Brownie having the better run on the brakes initially, going deeper, but Spinky having that more trail braking line, and as a result able to maintain that close proximity to Brownie. He's almost there, but he's almost down to that 7.5 tenths. In fact, he's in that zone now, but it's at the worst possible time. We've got 3 corners coming up, starting with turn number 10 here, where you don't want that dirty exit. It can cause the car to understeer or experience some snap oversteer, but Spinky getting a good run through 10 and now through X, i.e. 11. He makes his way down the hill now towards turn number 12, the difficult left-hander, the double left-hander, as they make their way down into the zone then. Can Spinky stay close enough to Brownie, or does he back it off? In fact, Brownie going very wide, and as a result, as he goes onto the AstroTurf here, he tries to get the car back on the circuit, but it takes him a little bit long, so Spinky picks up the P2. Now, will this be enough for Spinky right now? Unless he makes any mistakes, I think it might be enough, because Brownie will have to deal with the dirt on his tyres, but we know how strong Brownie is when he starts nailing those laps, and it's just one mistake from Brownie we've seen really so far in this race. Can he come back at Spinky with the time remaining? And behind them, of course, we've got Heedless, who's 3 seconds down and gradually closing up to them, and it's a recovery drive, but I think it's a bridge too far for the Scot as he makes his way through the second part of Stavlo now, and he tries to catch up to this Pat Tamer 5 seconds behind. I don't think being able to get back into this fight come the end of race number 2 as we are on the final lap. But as they make their way around right now and up towards Blanchimont, one driver who's coming to the end of race number 2 and will be absolutely smiling from ear to ear is Supremo, who makes his way into the bus stop chicane then. It's been a faultless run run in race number 2, much like race 1, and he comes out to the final corner to pick up the second win of the evening. The Mexican wins by 6.7 seconds ahead of Spinky Biltong, who did a great job to recover to P2 after a difficult start to the race. He's held off Brownie in the end, and Brownie coming home at the end of the podium. Well done to Brownie. Heedless in P4, another race not to remember, and then Tamer coming across the line, our Egyptian driver, rounding off our top 5, and then Hellcat once again, the best part of 54 seconds down currently, making his way onto the final sector right now. Gradually coming around and doing his best just to wrap up this one and get another 6th place finish, which of course consistency is key, and being able to bring the car home in the time remaining is all about it for Hellcat. And again, he makes his way around to complete our order very shortly, coming up towards Blanchimont right now. Making his way then up through the left-hander very shortly. We're going to stay with our British driver, coming in and using the full width of the circuit here and getting the car nicely stabilised there for Blanchimont. Now only one more set of corners to go, coming into the bus stop chicane, this time a lot more composed than compared to race number 1. And under braking he goes into the final corner, and then out he comes to complete our racing order for race number 2. Congratulations to all of our drivers, but to our back-to-back winner tonight, Supremo Tigon 5 from Mexico. Well, that is race number 2, ladies and gentlemen, and another closely fought one. Not necessarily for the leader being able to run away with it, but definitely for the other 2 spots in the podium. But subject to any stewards' inquiries, there are your race results. Supremo winning by 6.8 seconds in the end over Spinky Biltong, and our podium being rounded off by Brownie 192. Our top 5 being concluded by Heedless in P4, being struck with 2 P4s right now, which on a normal day would be fantastic, but tonight he couldn't afford to pick up these P4s, and Tamer rounding off our top 5 there. The fastest lap going to Supremo on the final lap at 2:41.341. And now we really wait to get underway for the final race of this evening, which will be race number 3. The feature length race where we've got 8 laps rather than the sprint length of 4. And there'll be the big question of when do our drivers pit? And we do expect them all to take a tyre change, of course, but when do they pit is the big question that sits over their heads right now. And I can tell you, in terms of the Drivers' Championship, as a result of that, the gap to our leader now, it is Supremo who is leading on 117.5 points, and it's 110 points for Heedless, so he is now 7.5 points down. He is going to need the win, plus also Supremo to have a disastrous race and pretty much nearly finish towards the back of the pack in order to win the Drivers' Championship. So Supremo is almost there, and Heedless now only has a 4-point lead over his teammate, Spinky Biltong. Spinky being on 106 points. And there is our time of day change, and I'm going to have a very quick sip of water before we get underway with race number 3. As all of our drivers will now be asked to ready up as normal. And for those wondering, did we have 10 drivers sign up at the start of season 39 for EU Division 3? We did have a grand total of 12 drivers. We had a nice and healthy field. But as I said at the start of the show, unfortunately, we had 3 drivers who just did not decide to turn up. They didn't give us a reason as to why. They just simply disappeared. And then off the top of that as well, we've had a number of drivers who've had to pull out on race evenings due to personal circumstances. It just really hasn't worked out in terms of the number of drivers for EU Division 3, but still the quality would be there, as I think you all agree the quality has been there for the battling, and it's not as though EU Division 3 have been slouching behind in terms of competitiveness. And it is indeed going to be one of those cases where I think everybody will be having to work as hard as humanly possible in order to get the most out of their tyres in this one. And really, based on what we've seen in EU Division 1 and EU Division 2, with the sparseness of the field here, it's going to be completely open when you choose to pit, and I think it's all down to when you feel comfortable on those tyres. If you feel they can do 6 laps, then you could pit at the end of lap number 2 and then go 6 laps on your second set with a lighter car. Or do you split the race in half and pit at the end of lap number 4? That's the question really, and I think for our championship leader right now, he'll play it safe and most likely decide to pit at the midpoint of the race because he hasn't got a major amount of pressure on him. He just needs to bring the car home effectively in what it is P1, P2 or P3 to win the championship with ease, whereas for Heedless he's got to go for a gamble and also get Supremo to finish effectively what is P5 if I remember correctly, or my maths is correct, in order to cause Supremo not to be able to win the championship right now. But I would say really for Heedless and Spinky, if they want to work this one together, they would want to split. Most likely have one driver pit on lap number 3 and one driver pit on lap number 5. If they split their strategies, then they can potentially box Supremo in and take the 3rd win of the evening off of him. And we're hearing that race 3 is about to get underway, folks, so we're going to be go for the final time this evening with our crossbows. Let's see who's going to be able to do it as the countdown begins. So 8 laps, a mandatory pit stop, a Drivers' Championship waiting to be wrapped up. Will this man be able to do it? Let's find out. So as we pan down to the grid once again, Supremo on the left-hand side, Spinky on the right-hand side. We've got Brownie and Heedless on that second row, but watch out for Tamer in P5. What can the Egyptian driver do? Perhaps with a little bit of strategy thrown into the mix. And it's lights out and away we go, and all of our drivers getting a relatively good start, much like in the previous 2 races, as we see Supremo getting the best launch of the bunch and already down into La Source's braking zone, and Brownie following him through here, gaining 2 places as Spinky bogs down at the start, and he just gets boxed in a little bit there by Brownie coming out of La Source, but as a result he loses some momentum, does Heedless, but his teammate Spinky dare not try and pass him by looks of things right now. Instead they're all settling into a line, although Spinky's having a little think about it, trying to get the message through to Heedless, I think, trying to say to him, look, if you don't get a move on, I will be going for this move come the run out onto the Kemmel straight here. But you can see all of them making it through, and Hellcat up into P5, but he's gone, oh goodness me, what on earth has happened there? We will find out shortly. Contact between the 2 drivers of Hellcat and Tamer, both of them in the wall coming out of Overage and Radion, but right now we can see that Brownie under pressure from the Scotsman and Heedless as they make their way into Lecom, and you can see Heedless immediately on the attack here. He's going full attack much like in race number 2, but will it be enough from the Scotsman, of course, as he tries to charge after Supremo? He's already clipped a bollard out of turn number 9. And that has cost him a little bit of time as they now come down into 10. And you can see that Brownie will look for a comeback very shortly as they all come down through the right-hander. And now coming into X, they go. And you can see that Brownie is really trying to size up a way of getting back at Heedless. But Heedless getting a very strong run out of X. Whereas Spinky gets a disastrous run into the wall on the inside out of X there. That's a disaster for the British driver. And whereas Heedless seems to be plagued with the mistakes previously, as we see Supremo and Heedless both do the same thing of running wide out of 12 here. All the drivers pushing it to a limit, and Supremo getting a major side spin there. Meanwhile, Heedless keeping that drift under control, and as a result, he's all over the back of the Mexican right now, and he will be pushing for the position as much as he possibly can. He'll want to keep that pressure on Supremo. He won't want to let the Mexican run away with this. He'll want him to potentially be pushed into a mistake, but right now you have to imagine that our top 3 breaking away from the rest of the field. Even if Supremo was to drop to the bottom of this top 3, he'd still feel comfortable and he'd still win the Drivers' Championship with a little bit of pointage to spare. So right now, Heedless is literally having to do everything he can to make sure that he has done enough should Supremo have a disastrous race, but it's not going to be enough based on just him picking up the win right now. As we see they come out towards Blanchimont for the first time of asking, and Heedless all over the back of Supremo. They go through the corner, but Heedless just gets a little bit out onto the AstroTurf on exit, but he's still there. He's still hanging on. He is clinging onto the back of Supremo's car as they make their way through bus stop. and this is where Supremo has been much stronger than Heedless throughout tonight, and you can see that again being shone through a little bit as they make their way across the timeline. It is Supremo only half a second ahead of Heedless, followed by Brownie, who's 1.2 seconds back. And then it's Spinky Biltong down in P4, and then with that instant between Tama and Hellcat, it's Tama in P5 and Hellcat in P6. As we look back towards our race leaders right now, and you can see that Supremo, pardon me, not able to get away from Heedless at this current point in time. He's getting the better run out of La Source, but you'll note that Heedless is just this slipstream as Hellcat decides to pit on the opening lap, going for that early pit stop gamble there, and it may give him a position later on versus Tamo. We'll wait and find out, of course, as we see that Heedless getting a decent run out of Eruge and Radion, but Supremo having the better run, and I think it will be the case that Heedless is not going to be close enough here, and Supremo is now going to try and break away, having broken the toe initially. Can Supremo be caught up again by Heedless? Heedless will have it under braking? I don't think so this time, although both drivers going a bit deep into Lacom, and Supremo going deeper than Heedless, and in fact Heedless has already gained 3 attempts through Lacom alone as they come downhill now towards turn at number 10. Hellcat still in the pits and due to come out the pits very shortly, but you can see how the Scotsman is really in his comfort zone. It's taken him the best part of 2 races to find it, but now he's there and he's hunting down the Mexican like a rabid dog right now, trying to get that win off of him, or put as much pressure on as possible in order to cause him to make a mistake for the win. As they come charging down towards turn number 12 for the second time of asking, will it be the case that our leader makes the same mistake again as he did on lap number 1, or does he take it more conservatively? He takes it more conservatively, and Heedless drifts wide there over what was the AstroTurf on the curve, and as a result that gap now has opened up by a second, and I think Heedless has pushed it a bit too far, and now he's at threat from Brownie trying to go for a move for P2 as we see Spinky a little bit further down the road there, 4.7 seconds down the road, and trying to get back into this fight. Now, if I was Spinky at this point, if I wanted to go for that podium, I would pit probably at the end of lap 3, so long as Brownie and Heedless keep on fighting. If they're going to be fighting for the rest of the race, then if I pit now, then I'm going to gain time on them nice and early. So there is plenty of time in terms of the racing right now to go, but as for Brownie, well, he'll want to get a move on and try and get the move on to Heedless, or will he decide to undercut Heedless early? Of course, that could be a way of doing it, as we see that the gap opens up between Brownie and Heedless once again, but Brownie right now driving a very conservative race. I think he recognises the fact he doesn't need to push. He feels that Heedless will make more mistakes because of how hard he is pushing after the race leader, and as a result of that, it means that Supremo right now is pulling away a little bit more lap on lap, and Heedless is literally having to throw everything at it, including the kitchen sink, to try and keep with our Mexican leader. But the pace setter is not being reeled in, and that gap is opened up to 2.7 seconds now as they go on to lap number 3. And we can see that Brownie there right now, just in the rear of Heedless's mind. You can ride on board with Heedless right now. We're riding with the Scotsman, and you'll note that Brownie is just there. He's an ever-present threat, staying within 9 tenths to 1.1 seconds behind Heedless. He's not there hanging onto the back of Heedless as such, but Brownie is close enough that should Heedless make even one mistake, and indeed there's the mistake, it's immediately happened as soon as we talk about it. Heedless makes a mistake going through Rouge and Radion, and as a result of that, Brownie is going to get ever closer now, and as the British driver gets onto the back of Heedless here, we're going to see a battle down into Lacom. They make their way down to the braking zone. Brownie's going to be made to go around the outside, and I think he's got it done as they go into the braking zone. Brownie goes a little bit deep, however, initially, but he keeps it together, and Heedless isn't able to find a way through initially, but he tries to go for the cutback through turn number 9, but the space isn't there, so instead he opts to go around the outside. Down into turn 10 they go, into the braking zone. Will it be Brownie on the inside still? No, he backs out of it, but makes Heedless go deep as a result of it, and Heedless right now finding the grip much like Tama did when nobody else could, and as a result of that, he's back up into P2. A brilliant sweeping move round the outside. Now, speaking of Tama, let's find out what happened to our Egyptian and also Hellcat on lap number 1. So we're going to ride on board with Tama here, and I believe that Hellcat ends up just going a little bit sideways coming through turn 5. He stamps on the brakes initially, the car just understeers wide, and here as he rejoins watch, he's going to come from the left-hand side of the camera, and the car just gives way and clips Tama as a result of that. That's very unfortunate there, and as a result, that's why Tama's quite a way back, but Hellcat's even further back as they continue to make their way around, and Heedless has started to clear away from Brownie just a little bit. But note how Spinky, over the course of 1.5 laps, has seen that gap drop from what was 4 seconds all the way down to 2 seconds, just through Brownie and Heedless fighting. And that's exactly what I was referring to earlier with the fact that Spinky right now should be thinking about, should he undercut his teammate and Brownie as well in order to give himself the best possible chance to get up there. But given that Heedless has cleared Brownie, I do think it's the case now that these two are going to be settling down into an order and not costing one another any more time. But we do see the damage has already been done with Heedless making those mistakes and jumping into the fight with Brownie. Supremo is now 5.2 seconds up the road, and I think it's for the Mexican to lose it at this point, because Heedless has got a huge mountain to climb if he wants to catch him as he goes into the pits, as does Brownie. And does Spinky decide to pit? No, Spinky decides to do the opposite of his teammate here. They're splitting the strategies in order to encircle Brownie and go for the double podium. Well, this is a very smart move in my opinion, because effectively what Heedless has now done is he's put Brownie in a position whereby Brownie isn't going to be able to undercut him, so Brownie will need to get the move done on track versus Heedless, whereas for Spinky, he needs to nail these laps. He won't be doing that if he doesn't get La Source right again like he did there. We got a little bit of a slap of understeer as he made his way out of the corner, but you get the picture right now in terms of the fact that Spinky, if he can go long here and Brownie has a difficult time getting those tyres warmed up or makes one or two mistakes, then Spinky will just simply outpace Brownie in terms of the strategy. Conversely, what Heedless could afford to do if he accepts the fact he's not going to win the Drivers' Championship and just wants to get another double podium with his teammate as both of them come out of the pits now, Heedless and Brownie, is he can afford to hold Brownie up a little bit. And in particular, if he was going to do it, it would be through Sector 2. So from the run from Lacombe all the way down to the first part of Stavlo, that's where you'd want to hold up Brownie effectively by letting him get close and then simply driving defensively. And that would give Spinky the chance to jump into the battle for the podium, or not, if not jump ahead of it. Because Heedless, I think, reckons he is the faster driver. That gap has opened up to 2 seconds since the pit stop. And Tamer pitted as well. All of our drivers going for that change of tyres. As we mentioned earlier, Tamer making his way right now out of Rouge and Radion, and now coming all the way down through the Kemmel Straight as we're on lap 4. In fact, I don't think Tamer took a tyre change there. He didn't take a tyre change, in fact, whereas our race leaders definitely did. So Tamer being bold here and decided to do 8 laps on a single set of not super soft, sports soft tyres here. I think that's going to be very risky, but we will wait and see. Of course, perhaps the Egyptian knows something that we do not, as they all continue to make their way around on circuit right now. And we can see Hellcat at the back of the field, having pitted early on, not able to close up too much of a gap and having a very difficult time, but keeping it together there through turns 3, 4 and 5 this time around and continuing to push on all the same. Now we look back up towards our race leader, and do remember that Supremo right now has not pitted, but again, he has all the options in his favour. He was the best part of 5 seconds ahead of Heedless before Heedless pitted. So right now we would expect that gap is either going to stabilise or open up a little bit more, or perhaps come down a tiny bit if Heedless really nails it. But Supremo has options available to him. He has a lot of time to play with here, and Spinky's the closest driver down in P2, and Supremo immediately reacting to the rest of the field right now, coming to the pits but clipping the entry wall there. And Spinky continuing to go long here. Now, I'm wondering at this point whether the British driver here is going to try and go all the way to the end of lap 7 before pitting. And the reason for that would be that if he could get Supremo to catch up to him, perhaps he could hold up Supremo, a little bit of team tactics, in order to cause Supremo to have to essentially fight and then lose time and fall back into a battle versus Heedless. Well, Heedless won't be gaining if he continues to make more mistakes, and that's one that Scott will not want to do, going out onto the dirt there on entry into a bus stop. He's carrying so much momentum in that car, and it almost caught him out there. And as he makes his way across the timing line here, I suspect what we are going to see is that Supremo is going to be coming out of the pits very shortly, and it'll be as they make their way out of La Source, and Supremo is there. He's just come out of the pits, and as the camera is going to pan around here, you'll see Supremo at the foreground, and then in the background you'll very faintly see Heedless most likely. In fact, you don't quite see him there, but as the camera continues to pan back and forth, we'll see that Heedless, the gap has dropped to 3.8 seconds, so it was a good call by Heedless to pit early, and Supremo has to now warm those tyres up and get them set as Heedless gets in very sideways over the top of the hill, and I think that's going to be another half-second penalty, and it's the last thing he will want to, because that means he's going to fall back into a fight with Brownie, and indeed he does, the smallest of track limit infringements, and it's being penalised here. And he was building that momentum on Supremo, but now he's lost that momentum. Brownie's not close enough to make a move. but we have seen this before, and Heedless getting it wrong again, and very sideways over the midpoint of Lake On, and Brownie's going to go all the way around the outside here of Heedless for P3. Now remember, this is effectively, we believe, for P2 on circuit right now, but of course the more these two fight, the more they open things up for Spinky, and the pit time loss here for a tyre change is approximately 25 seconds. So right now, Spinky, who is leading 28 seconds ahead of these guys, is going to come out, we suspect, ahead of the pair of them. So if they fight just a little bit longer, Spinky will come out in P2. He will have jumped both of them by going long. Of course, he won't jump Supremo, who was the best part of 7.7 seconds ahead before he pitted. But this is really working out right now for the British driver as we take a look at Supremo, who did go for a tyre change in the pits. But Spinky really just coming to life in this race. In race number 3, he seems to be very comfortable with regards to his tyres here, and as a result, he's just extracting the pace. And it may be the case that Supremo feels he doesn't need to push and that he will jump Spinky, but I do wonder right now whether the British driver here has pulled a little bit of a strategic masterclass in the fact that the gap is continuing to open up just a little bit, albeit we'll have to wait to see on the next lap when Supremo's got the tyres fully in the operating window, as we note that right now really in that battle for P3, Brownie and Heedless once again drag racing up towards Blanchimont right now. Heedless on the outside, Brownie on the inside, but Brownie jumping onto the racing line and Heedless backing out of it. I think that Scott realises that he's got to find an inventive way round, because otherwise Brownie will just defend it smartly, and they come down towards bus stop right now. It's going to be a battle on the brakes, and Heedless just does not have the brakes to do it right now. They're running the same cars, of course, and all the machinery is the same, but in the braking zones, Heedless seems to be one of the weaker drivers for competitive battling versus Brownie, albeit he's a great overtaker, but he just doesn't seem to have the confidence on the brakes like Brownie and Tamer do, for example, and that's his deficit as they now come into La Source for the 6th time of asking. And this fighting, for reference now, the gap between them and our race leader Spinky is effectively who was our P4 man when everyone started to come into the pits. That gap has now opened up to 30.5 seconds. So as a result, I reckon that Spinky is going to jump the pair of them when he pits, should he decide to pit at the end of this lap. They make their way up through Erosion Radion once again, and Heedless getting another slap of oversteer as he goes through turn number 4. He just cannot keep the car in a straight line in that dirty air versus Brownie, and that is going to be even more time lost, as now he's down to 1.5 seconds behind our P3 man, and Brownie will know that if he can stay ahead, even if Heedless catches up to him, Heedless being caught out by the mistakes that we've seen time and time again over the course of tonight's racing. It's a really difficult one for the Scot, and Brownie doing everything he needs to right now to make it 3 podiums out of 3 tonight. Of course, he's still got to bring that car home, and he's still got 2.5 laps to do so right now. Now, I can tell you, in the battle for the lead, that Spinky Biltong is now being matched in terms of pace by Supremo. That gap has not opened up anymore. Supremo now holding that gap at 24.3 seconds. In fact, it's starting to come down a little bit here, so I suspect that Spinky is starting to hit the cliff of tyre life, although I say that, and then the gap opens up a little bit back to 24.6 seconds, but I think Supremo is now matching our race leader for pace, and just doing enough to stay there in the lead of the race, the effective lead once the pit stop has occurred. But do remember, Spinky could decide to gamble and not change tyres, and that would bring him out ahead of Supremo if he decided to do so right now. So he's always got that gamble. And Tamer, to give you an idea, this is what the tyres look like after 6.5 laps. Well, no, my apologies. After 5.5 laps, I should really say. He's on his 6th lap right now. They're quite heavily worn, but not too heavily worn to be disastrous. So that will be the big question. And Spinky goes around once again, and he is opening that gap up, folks. He has opened that gap up to 27.5 seconds. In fact, Supremo having a very bad time of things right now, and I think the Mexican is starting to fall off the cliff in terms of his performance tonight. He's starting to hit that region where perhaps the legs just haven't got it in them anymore. Perhaps the tiredness is starting to kick in. Perhaps the pressure started to get to him. All he needs to do is bring that car home in the racing pack, and he will pick up the Drivers' Championship right now. Even more so, he finishes ahead of Heedless, but the pressure's getting there. You can see that gap is coming down. It's now down to 1.5 seconds, and Brownie is getting ever closer, and Spinky Spinky right now is in a very strong spot to take the race lead come the end of lap 7. He will need to pit at the end of this lap, will Spinky, our race leader who you're looking at right now. But he's putting in the laps left, right and centre. His last lap for reference, a 42.0, whereas Supremo by comparison, a 46.1. Supremo having a disastrous lap there, and Brownie meanwhile, to give you a relative delta, on a 41.7. Brownie, our fastest man of anyone in terms of keeping it together, as Healess gets it very sideways once again coming out of Origin Radion. And it's just becoming a case of trying to survive in this car now. We're going to jump on board and take you through what happened here. So you're going to see, I think he's going to end up just drifting wide out of turn 4. He turns into the apex of 4, but the car doesn't want to turn in. He continues to have that turning angle there, and the rear end just starts to snap on him, and he ends up on the grass, but fortunately clips the wall to stabilise the car. That could have been a very different story if the car hadn't have grazed the wall and instead it had gone nose first into it. He would have been spinning for quite a while, and then that car would have needed to been recovered, and I think at that point Tama could have had a chance of getting up into P4, but say it ain't so, it could still happen. But now we can see that Spinky is being reeled in a little bit by Supremo here. The gap has dropped down to 27.7 seconds. Place your bets, folks, at the end of this lap. Will Spinky come out ahead of Supremo on the final lap, or will he come out behind? I'm putting money on effectively what will be ahead right now, as we say hello to Luco33 in the chat, who makes the Ross Braun reference of Michael, I need you to do 20 quali laps to jump Mika Hakkinen. Well, you can see right now that Spinky has really been putting in those qualifying laps. They have been consistent laps. They have been at the pace that's needed right now. And as he makes his way through Blanchimont, I think he will not take a tyre change here, folks. He's done 7 laps on these tyres. Yes, they're looking heavily worn, but he's still putting in really solid lap times. And it will be only 1 lap to go. And as he comes into the pits, then the big question begins. He comes in. Will he take the tyre change? Let's find out. Supremo right now making his way up towards Blanchimont, and we can see that gap holding around the region of 27 seconds. So Spinky does have the options available to him, and Brownie is only 2.4 seconds back from Supremo. As we see, the pit crew are out for Spinky right now, and they'll be waiting to service the car. Supremo making his way through bus stop. Spinky still waiting. Will they get the car done in time? As we see that Brownie is also starting to come across the timing line here. Supremo is making his way down towards turn 1. Spinky in the pits, and they've decided to go for the tyre change here. I think that is a tyre change. In fact, they haven't gone for the tyre swap. No, they've not gone for the tyre swap, and it was enough in the end to get him out ahead here. He's only a second ahead. It wasn't as much as perhaps he thought, and as a result of that, indeed, we didn't think he was going to be this close, and we see that Spinky now has got 1 lap to try and hold off the Mexican of Supremo, and he's got to do it on what is effectively 7-lap-old tyres versus much fresher tyres for Supremo, and I think Supremo's already got the momentum here. He's going to look to the inside. That was a very, very daring attempt to go to the inside for turn number 6 as they go onto the Kemmel Straight here, and I think Spinky will now hold on to the race. And as Supremo gets a half-second penalty, I think he'll feel aggrieved there that wasn't his fault for getting the half-second penalty in his opinion. However, we'll let the race stewards decide that one. But Spinky placing the car in a position to avoid Supremo getting past, but he's still got 2 more sectors to hold off the Mexican right now. Will he able to steal the win off of Supremo? Will it not be a triple win for our championship leader and who we suspect will be our championship winner come tonight? Can Spinky hold on? He's got the best part of half the circuit to go, and Supremo's got to try and find a way past it. You can be sure of one thing: Spinky is going to find any which way to make that KTM as wide as humanly possible. He's going to become the biggest crossbow on the planet, and he's going to make sure that the crossbow behind him can't get into the firing line. As we see, they make their way down through turn 12 right now, and Supremo in the rear of your camera shot there as we're riding on board from Spinky and looking back from the British driver. You'll note that Brownie is also getting a little bit closer to Supremo, and perhaps that one little move where Supremo tried to go to the inside 3-6 when Spinky already had the tight line, perhaps that's just phased the Mexican a little bit there, and he started to fall back off the pace. As we see, that gap is now 1.6 seconds, and Brownie is in the slipstream zone versus Supremo as they make their way through Stavlo 1 and now come towards the second part here, and we can see that Brownie in a prime position to potentially capitalise, but he goes deep into Stavlo 2, and as a result he will not be in the slipstream now as they make their way on towards Blanchimont. And now it's really the case, will Spinky bring it home? He's got only 3 corners to go. It was a strategic gamble. Can the British driver hold on and bring it home? 2 to go. He goes a little bit too wide, and it's a disaster for Spinky. losing it at Blanchimont, and that means that the Mexican regains the lead with only the bus stop chicane to go. He doesn't need to do anything theatrical now. He comes out the final corner, and Supremo will make it 3 out of 3. The Mexican wins EU Division 3 Season 39. Brownie comes home in P2. He'll be well chuffed with that result, and Heedless comes home at the end of the podium, much to his teammates' detriment there, and it will be Spinky who comes home in P4 in what was a disaster right in this race, and he'll be kicking himself for that one for days, I can imagine. And then it will be the Egyptian Tamir as he makes his way up towards the bus stop chicane, who's going to come home in P5. A solid set of results from the Egyptian, showing good pace early on, but just not having enough to stay over our top 4, but still bringing it home in P5. A good seasonal round for the Egyptian. And then last but not least of our drivers will be Hellcat, making his way down towards turn number 12 right now. What an absolutely crazy ending, and you have to feel for Spinky. That was a nightmare right at the end. They're the last thing he would have wanted, but just took a little bit too much apex curve at Blanchimont as we see Hellcat wrestling with the car to bring it home. And as a result of that, unfortunately for Spinky, just lost it on the AstroTurf there. Just one curb, but still, I'm sure he'll take it in his stride that he's had a good EU Division 3 Season 39, and that going into Season 40, should he wish to come back for Season 40, which I'm sure he will, he's still going to have plenty more in the tank. As we say hello to Noddy 1922, who was the supporter of Brownie there, and very pleased with Brownie picking up the P2, no doubt. But it was a good job by all of our drivers with a crazy ending, and it will be Hellcat who's going to gradually bring the car home, battling to bring the car home on what I believe are effectively 8-lap-old tyres. Those rears in particular absolutely shredded on his crossbow right now, and he's just got to try and bring it home. 3 more corners to go. He's almost there, of course. Makes his way through Blanchimont right now. No more theatrics, we hope. And now he comes down towards the bus stop chicane, making his way into the braking zone he goes, and it will be the case that Hellcat rounds off our field. Goes a bit deep, however, but we're going to see him across the line. Congratulations to Hellcat to make it home. Congratulations to all of our drivers for making it through the races tonight and for their results in race number 3. But to our race winner and our deserved champion, Supremo Tigon 5 from Mexico. But what a brilliant finale for EU Division 3's Season 39. We may not have had that many cars, but we definitely had plenty of action and drama. And there are your race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries, as always. Supremo Team making it 3 out of 3 with the win. 1 second ahead of Brownie, holding on for a brilliant second place. A brilliant turn of form from the British driver. And third place being brought home by Heedless there, ruining what could have been tonight, I reckon, when he'll think about this one later. Spinky in P4 with that disastrous ending when he could have had the win, and Tamir rounding off our top 5. And what that means is, in terms of our championship results, ladies and gentlemen, is that after the 3 rounds, I can announce to you very shortly, as provisional results I should point out, that it will be the case that in the end, Supremo held on for the championship win with 138.5 points, pipping Heedless by the best part of what was 10.5 points. He'll come second on 128, and in third place will be Spinky Biltong, his teammate, on 122.5. So a brilliant showing from Heedless and Spinky, a brilliant showing, and they definitely dominated the constructors there. And the fastest lap on that final race, a 2:40.506, the fastest lap we've seen all evening from Supremo Tigon on lap number 7. But some absolutely fantastic racing and a great way to end what has been a tough season, a very difficult combination for all of our drivers. And now we have King of the Karts to round off our race evening, of course. Who wouldn't be here without some King of the Karts? But I think really the story of the season for me was not just Supremo with the dominant winning, but also the consistency, albeit perhaps not as much in the final round here, of the combination of Heedless and Spinky, a brilliant team pairing for EU Division 3 as we get ready for King of the Karts. And also the one driver who really shone when he was able to finally arrive at the races, Brownie, who literally just seemed to turn on the form day in, day out. A brilliant performance by the British driver, and we look forward to what he's able to achieve in future seasons of GTSRL. But of course, all of our drivers deserve a pat on the back for a brilliant job. But we can only call out so many of them in terms of those we've observed, as we see some more people popping in right now to take part in King of the Karts. And I think that people are also asking for rain conditions, but we'll wait and see whether our Lord and Saviour MDC is going to give us those. And I think we are going to get ourselves readied up and also do the camera flip. I don't think we're getting the rain time of day change. So I just need to get to a spectator cam and get the camera flipped around. So I do not want to be racing in reverse view. There we go. We're getting underway. King of the Karts, it's in the dry then. Let's see if we can do better than our P4 last time out. Jerry, our driver there, turned himself into a little bit of a bullet. And we've got 2 laps tonight as well. Oh, this is going to be long. This is going to be a very long King of the Karts. Well, that was a bit unfortunate. Plenty of time. We're hitting that rev limiter now, so we're not going to gain too much on everybody around us. Jerry just coming flying by. It reminds me of the high stand bystand moment from season 36. Was it season 36? Oh, cheers, Jerry. Wait, did we just see a kart fly? I think we just saw Spinky fly into the atmosphere then. It was season 34 we had the high stand bystand moment down into 13. I wonder how Stan's doing right now. We're only 3 seconds off the leader, so this is doing good. This is good pace. Got to be careful though. Everybody seems a little bit fighty tonight. Vibes gradually catching up as well. Now, if this had only been one lap, that would have been one heck of a recovery right at the end there. But we've got to go again. So the suffering must continue. This is not looking good. This is a little bit of brown pants time. Thank you, disappearing off the face of the earth briefly then. And I know I'm going to get caught here well before Blanchard. This is the worst possible place I can be right now. That's how you do it. Heart was pounding there because I could see the gap opening, but I thought I'd taken too much speed onto the exit. Oh, that worked. Ooh. Cheers, Erk. You did well as well to finish third with all that. I could see that as we were coming down towards Blanchard. Everybody was just going to catch up, so that's why I just lifted off the throttle a little bit, thinking to myself that the little bumps would just send me flying. So, yeah, I thought I'd let you all sort of take it out on one another and then just me sort of sneak through at the end. Oh, that was a good laugh, though. Yeah, it worked out nicely, and I think that was a good laugh. But well, there's your results for King of the Karts, Season 39, Round 3, EU Division 3. So us bringing it home in first, only 2.5 tenths ahead of ZenQ. Erk rounding off the podium there with a great job. Expect more from Erk in Season 40 as well. And then we've got in P4 Ark Martin, and our top 5 being rounded off by Brownie there. And Heedless picking up the fastest lap at 2:41.312, almost as fast as our lap times in the KTMs, funnily enough, in lap number 2 there. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in all the way through Season 39 of GTSRL, whether it's been the EU divisions or the NA divisions. Thanks for being with us, and if you have enjoyed it, be sure to let us know, either by subscribing to our caster channels or letting us know on the GTSRL website, that is gtsrl.tv. But until Season 40, I have been your host, and this is the conclusion of Season 39. I've been Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and it's goodbye from me. Stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, until next time, remember to stay on track. Good night.